So you want to improve the brakes on your car. So you're going to put disc brakes on it because they're better, right? Well, this is how it works. When you put your brakes on and you're going fast and you hit them really hard, the front brakes are going to lock up and the rear brakes aren't. That's why buses, the later ones that 71 and up, have a proportioning valve to make sure that happens. Vanagons too, they all have it because they have disc brakes, okay? Disc brakes lock up a lot easier than these. Now, Ghias, 67 Ghia, they didn't have a proportioning valve. I can't explain that. I'm not an engineer why they think that car needs it. But they supposedly have a shorter stopping distance than a Bug that has drum brakes. So the thing is disc brakes lock up really easy, a lot easier than drum brakes. So when they designed the Ghia, they designed the brake pad size, the actual contact surface for the shortest stopping distance. And while they're doing this, they're taking into account a whole bunch of things. The weight of the car, how much force is down on the front wheels when you start to put the brakes on, the nose goes down. How much force is imparted by the shoes in the back to slow the back wheels down. And they do a whole bunch of mathematics. And then they go, this is how big we want these brake pads to be. And this is how big the pistons are supposed to be. And this is what we think the car will do when we're done making it. Like they designed this on paper, they have to test it. And they come up with the best solution. Now this car didn't ever come with disc brakes. And somebody bought a kit. And now what happens is in dry weather, if you just tap them, give them a little pressure, you can make them lock up really easy. And so that's bad because now the car is going to take longer to stop. So you didn't make it better. If that's what you're after, if you're putting special brakes on it, you're probably not putting them on so it'll take longer to stop. You're doing it so it'll take less distance to stop. And this does exactly the opposite of what you want if that's what you're after. Otherwise, you can just be able to say, I have disc brakes. So somebody told me this was kind of some SUV brake caliper that they've managed to be able to cobble onto a spindle that they manufacture so you can do this. Now, the other problem with this is you think of how big the disc is, and then you've got an additional disc out here just for the wheel to turn. So that's kind of weird. You just made the wheel heavier. The whole thing, it's like having like a 911 has alloy wheels, and they're really light. And orally or not, I don't know what they probably are now too, but like a 70 911 with alloys, those things are really light. People like those because they're really light. And here we just added, this might, I don't know, I don't think this whole plate weighs as much as a wheel, but you're adding a lot of weight to it. So the wheels lock up really easy on dry pavement with these. And another compromise, I don't know if it's necessary in this case, I guess the tire would probably hit the body when you turn. He's got 155s on it. So you got less tire on the ground. So it makes it easier for the oversized, which they are, aftermarket disc brakes to lock up the wheel. So you just, first of all, you put the wrong disc brakes on the car because they don't belong there, and it has a shorter stopping distance, longer, and then you put a narrower tire with less patch. If this thing was still stock, it would stop better. If it was raining, the brakes on this thing are practically useless because basically when they lock up and it's raining and it's wet, they're hydroplaning. When they lock up on pavement, they're doing the same thing. They're hydroplaning, but there's just no water, but they're still sliding. They're doing a little, but very little. So that's how I feel about this kind of thing. Now, to do this really right would be, even if you buy a new caliper that like the Type 3 ones that supposedly for a kit for a Bug, because this one, because it's link pin, you can't just use a Bug a caliper. They have to, unless you find a 65 356, you can bolt those spindles onto this with disc brakes. Okay, maybe even earlier, but I'm pretty sure 65 might be the only year. And if you can find them, because there's only a few around, they're very expensive. But that's the only way to do it. But you're still, your pad size, that's an unknown. Is it the actual contact, the square footage of the pads, okay? Like the Ghias, when they were stock, they had some had little tiny round pads, and I think they had some unusual pads, but they were very specific for the vehicle. So when you put the Type 3 ones on that they sell, those are too big, and it'll make it lock up easier than it should. It's not terrible like this, because this is bad. But that gear, most of these gears, they've had different calipers put on, and the originals are long gone. So they all have, the pad is a little too big because it's meant for a square back. Square back weighs, I don't know, 500 pounds more or something than a gear. So when you start doing stuff like this, start thinking about, why is it better, and who did anybody engineer it? Like, for instance, they make kits for the back. If you're gonna do it, buy one with a handbrake in it. Because, see, this is the thing about brakes. You don't need a handbrake, right? But they also call it an emergency brake. And there's one thing that, like, all these cars got new windows, new this, new handles, new engines, new rear brake drums, new brake shoes, and new everything. But a lot of them don't have? They don't have a new push rod for the brakes. And if that breaks, which it happened to me once, and this doesn't work the way it's supposed to, you're going to run into something. So, and the other thing is when you adjust this, you don't want to adjust it and keep it, because you're adjusting it to get this play right here, you see? There's a little play, and that play is, some of it is in the pedal itself, wiggle. Now, if you look at, yeah, this is primo. You see this? This is moving, the pedal, a little teeny bit, but the push rod's not. You can see a little bit of movement. See, watch. See it? See how it's kind of, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but this is moving, but the push rod's not. And so you adjust it for minimum here, but you might find yourself adjusting it for minimum here because, and find out this thing is practically falling apart because you've made it so long. Now, the reason I think this happens as they age is because every time you push down on the pedal, you're trying to push the master cylinder away from the car. And so over years and years, it starts going that way. I think this body panel bends or flexes because every one of them, you can get pretty close to the limit on this thing. This one's good. And don't forget the stop, and you play around with it to get it all the best you can. This stop, when you're working with it, put oil on the threads. Lubricate and clean this area so it'll slide around easy. And we put a little oil on it. It's not going to seize up in the future, and you can get this thing really nice. So there you go. That's all I know about this stuff anyway. There's so much more, but there's little things on the car, and if they're, again, they can make the difference between a terrible pedal and a high pedal, So there you go.